Hi, welcome to Pamela Price Unfiltered. I'm Pamela Price, your host, and this is the space and the place for real talk. This podcast is all about raw, unfiltered conversation on law, politics, culture, education, systemic racism, and current events shaping our world. We'll go beyond the headlines to dive deep into how some of our most pressing issues are impacting real people, real families, and our communities. My goal is to help you navigate the complexities of today's world. Each episode will tackle an issue, breaking it down in a way that's honest, actionable, and informative. We'll hear from community leaders, activists, lawyers, educators, healers, and everyday people on the front lines of change. For those tuning in for the first time, I'm Pamela Price, a longtime attorney, political activist, and champion for justice. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and to my Substack channel to read the weekly word from Pamela Price Unfiltered. Your support keeps the conversation raw and unfiltered. Welcome to the show. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Pamela Price Unfiltered. My guest today is Regina Brown Wilson, the Executive Director of California Black Media, a network of over 30 print, digital, and streaming news organizations serving African American communities across the state of California. Brown Wilson is also a co-convener in partnership with Ethnic Media Services of Black, Latino, Asian, Pacific Islander, and Native American news publishers in California. Wilson has had numerous official and advisory roles in state government. She was appointed a commissioner for the 2020 Census Complete Count Committee and helped secure an investment of over $50 million from the state for paid media to promote census participation, a significant portion of which was allocated to ethnic media. She is a member of the African American Empowerment Council of California, the Sacramento NAACP, and Governor Gavin Wilson's minority-owned small business task force under the Government Operations Agency. Brown Wilson also chairs a think tank for Black women, housed at California State University, Domingo Hills. Regina, welcome to Pamela Price Unfiltered, and thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, we're excited to have you. This is a time that we're focusing on media and information, disinformation, misinformation. And so it's great to have you here as giving us a different perspective than perhaps the mainstream media that people often get. So tell us about the work that you have been doing for the last 10 years now?
Yeah, so I will tell you, the past 10 years has been, or has felt like a whirlwind, because we've gone through a pandemic together. We've gone through a census. We've gone through several elections. We've gone through the unrest with George Floyd and what that, um, shine a light on our communities. And so it feels like it's not ever been ending, what we have gone through. I mean, we've gone through folks who have had to deal with hate and in California launching a large campaign around hate and looking at the African American numbers of being still the number one most hated or most reported of hate crimes that we have. I mean, I would say for the last decade, and it's probably been longer than that, of when they've been recording the information. Um,
So tell us, what have you been able to sort of, navigate for California Black media in the midst of, post-COVID, but also where we saw such an acceleration of information right now? How is that impacting the work that you do, and how are you dealing with that?
No, I'm gonna just tell you, you have to tune out a little bit. I think you have to, I am very much so, I pay attention to the social media. I look at social media, for instance, as the new, the new paper boy. I don't believe that social media is a tool to get information. So it's a delivery system. And so what I recognize though, if you really want true, really strong content, I mean, think about what it just takes for you to get your show together, right? If somebody told you to do that every hour on the hour, it just would be impossible. You're a human being. And even with I think people are still looking for authenticity. So I think we have all these new novel things that we have at our fingertips with technology. But I do, I still go back to the core of what makes what we do so well. And California Black Media does a great job at um, good old-fashioned journalism. And we go and we take our gut and my gut tells me this is a story, and I then I get a photographer, get a freelance writer, whoever on it, and we then make it beautiful. We go back and forth. We take a whole week. I mean, in real world, we're not necessarily breaking news, but we don't have the budget to break news, and so we don't necessarily say that we have to necessarily break news. I think we put news into context. We make it so that, I remember growing up being like, people like, oh, well, are you reading the LA Times? Are you reading this, the Washington Post? And the funny part about all of that is that I felt like I always had to read between the lines. No one asked the question, how is this going to impact African American community? So they'll look at a very big issue and not understand that it may have very different implications in portions of our community. And what does that look like? We're not all the same. And we know that no community is, but people sometimes think that Black community is all the same. We are not a monolith, right? We, um, the folks in Oakland think differently. And mind you, they have all different kind of thoughts that they think, but the people in Oakland are going to probably think different than the people in San Francisco, and the people in San Francisco are going to have different perspective than people in Richmond and Vallejo, Sacramento, LA, San Diego. And so what we really try to do is we try to make sure that we're looking and listening to where the difference is, right? Because that is what also helps to make news stories news, is by being able to bring something in value to something that people didn't think of before or didn't have a different perspective. So if you tell me that, oh my goodness, I mean, and I lived in the Bay Area too, so I understand like when people try to say that we can't use our water, and you people in LA and stuff that are like pools and green lines, and you like, wait a second, they telling me we can't flush our toilet, and you guys can have all of this. You start having, I mean, that becomes a regional fight on water, but you really start to have a real sense of, whoa, wait a second. You think about it differently. You think about it differently living in the Central Valley and in the Bay Area, where you have more access to fresh fruits and vegetables than you do. You can go to farmers markets. Not that you can't in Southern California, but it's not the same like going to where those farms are on the Central Coast in Northern California. There's a different vibe there than, when you go and you're in the city and you're in LA and you're like, oh, I'm going to go to this grocery store in the Inland Empire. Um, and the things that they don't have. There's still urban sprawl in a place like the Inland Empire where I reside right now. Um, it is huge. And when you look at the Inland Empire, you say the county of Riverside and San Bernardino. San Bernardino County spans all the way, I think, to almost like to the Nevada border, all the way down, to the Temecula border where San Diego is, and I think all the way down to all the way past, maybe I want to say even Palm Springs area. So you have this vast differences that I think communities end up feeling. And what we try to do is at least capture that, because no one else is. And I think that's what makes us really, really unique. We're capturing things and stories that you may not have heard of, putting it into perspective that you may not have seen, and tying it to public policy. Because a lot of times, the reason that I believe our community and other marginalized communities are disenfranchised is because our voice was never heard when they were setting the rules to the game. And when you're not there when they're setting the rules to the game, that and or that maybe or that, not maybe, but that shall, that's what then makes a difference because people become so definite in what they want done and they don't understand how it may impact downstream other communities. And I was able to have the opportunity to watch that firsthand when I worked in the Schwarzenegger administration. And I knew nothing about government other than, you pay your taxes and you recognize that government is there for, it's there. I knew nothing, but I learned education policy by reading the newspaper every day, all the different education beat reporters. I was the girl who was clipping the stories and giving it to my communications director that would then give it to the Secretary of Education, who would then take that information and they would talk about policy. But now, now you have to kind of listen to influencers. You have to kind of get your information from a lot of different places. But one of the things that I can tell you is that I think that the trustworthiness, that is something that is not going to go out of style. And even in the midst of all the chaos that we're seeing right now, I think people are starting to recognize, even our lawmakers are starting to recognize how the internet can be weaponized. This whole, we don't want any rules to the game. Imagine driving on the freeway and there were no rules. Imagine there were no speed limits, there was no signs that tell you to exit, there were no lines that say here you can do this and here you can do that. It would be a complete mess. And that is what we are living really in our information. And I think that right now the genie is out of the bottle, so it's hard to put it back in. But I do think that people as a whole will self-correct because I think that's the only way it's going to happen. People are going to be requesting that you don't get to follow me and stalk me and then send me ads. People are going to say, I'm going to be more, I want to make sure that my information is kept my information. And people are going to lean towards trying to make sure that they can get, quality content that they can trust. And I think what California Black Media has done is work to build a brand that people can trust, that we kick the tires. Everybody in our newsroom does not think the same. We fight. We love each other, but we fight. So that means that every story is not just, oh, yeah, we were all sitting around. We just all believe the same thing. That is not what happens. Oftentimes my team will say, we should have a podcast just so that people can see what we have to go through. Because we literally, I mean, sometimes it gets really, really heated, but I try to foster a space where people can have that ability to disagree, but respect each other.
Thank you for that perspective. So it is about trustworthiness and certainly knowing what you do to ensure, that the stories that you're producing are vetted and properly, that they don't reflect just one perspective. Because I think that's a lot of the criticism that people have is that from mainstream media, you're getting one perspective. And then from some of the bloggers, you're getting one perspective. But folks don't know the difference, right?
I was going to say there's just a whole education that has to go into people understanding, people clearly labeling their opinion as opinion or commentary, which we do too. Like we just label what it is. I'm very like today is my day where I'm going to be doing all my reading before the stories go to all the Black media. And I have to look at this as well. Like, I mean, I won't say that we're always perfect. I have to look at things and I say, wait, does that sentence, who are you attributing this to? You can have writers that'll say something because they're knowledgeable, but I'm like, who did you attribute it to? I don't want you to be the expert here. I want you to attribute this to someone. Where did you hear this from?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I interviewed Linton Johnson, who has started Ovis News, which is on a mission to try to get rid of fake news. And he talks about how the journalistic standards that existed in days gone by they're not following them. Many news people and certainly the bloggers are not following them. So they use anonymous sources, and that is a violation of the standards of journalism. But nobody seems to be, the public doesn't know that, right? And so you read a story or you hear something that they say anonymous sources said, and you don't know how credible the anonymous sources are or if they're actually, if they know what they're talking about, or if they have a political agenda, which is what we saw, recently with the recall and all the drama we had in 2023 and 2024 in the Bay Area was was a lot of people's opinions being presented as if it was actual fact or if it was news. So, how do you advise people to kind of fight back and protect themselves from all of that misinformation?
Yeah. I mean, this is the part that's really the hardest because we need our community to be smart and really just start look at who you're getting your information from. There could be an AI follower, but have you ever met this person? Have you ever seen this person in real life? Does this person have a track record? Some of the stuff you just have to, like, they're going to have to do because anything else, they'll say we're going against someone's First Amendment right. Because at the end of the day, that's really what this boils down to. I can be a bona fide, legitimate person doing media, and we are. Um, but in our community too, what happens a lot of times, like people will take their power if we have our own power, meaning that we have enough celebrities where we should be like, wait, who's our Black-owned media outlet? I'm actually choosing them to break this story. You know what I mean? Like, let me use this person to break that story. Our community also needs to take charge in that and say, this is what I need to do. I want to say that Eric Garner, I believe his daughter, I followed her just a little bit, but before she passed away, that was one of the things she said. She said, I'm not talking to anybody until I talk to the Black media first. And it didn't matter that she's like, oh, if their audience is smaller, what you do is you say, this is how I'm going to talk and you allow the traditional media to pick up your stuff. Today, I mean, we were actually surprised. My editor sent a note from a story that we wrote about LaFonza Butler, former Senator LaFonza Butler. Um, and there's some work, I guess she just got picked up by with OpenAI. And it was really interesting, but he was like, oh my goodness, this was like kind of the first time we're a legitimate news source, but Politico picked up a piece and they were talking and they hyperlinked to one of our stories that was actually one of our publication, one of our partner publications. And so that's nice because, you know, for a long time you had traditional media who would just try to bypass the stories that we had, like try to act like we didn't matter, like we could be breaking a news story and they would then be like, nope, I want to go talk to the people so I could pretend like I broke it. They would do that because there was that standard. But I think that over time, we have been able to, you know, consistently show excellence. And not that I'm looking for anybody else's approval. I think that's whenever we probably stopped all of that. I don't care about their approvals. I don't really care about anybody else's approval. I think that the work that we're doing is just trying to make sure that the Black community has access to quality, high content, that's credible content that they can rely on. And um, and as it goes for trying to, you know, really trying to figure out how to get the public to better understand that. I mean, we just need them to get savvier. You know, and some are. I mean, I am seeing things, I won't lie to you, I'm seeing things where people say, um, they'll hear somebody say something online, and then they'll say they're waiting for a credible news source. Because they're still saying, I don't know if I really believe that because I'm waiting for this credible news source to say it. They're like, oh, I mean, in this case, I was reading something, they wanted TMZ because it was celebrity related. So they were waiting for TMZ to break the news because they didn't feel like it was real if TMZ didn't break the news. And so I think that people are starting to get to that point of trying to make sure that they, um, uh, you know, are able to feel comfortable with the information that they're getting. We just need to make sure it becomes more of a, um, you know, not the exception, but the rule.
Right. Normalizing that you will do your research, which is, Linton's advice was do your research. And we had the experience in January of 2023, shortly after I was inaugurated on Nextdoor, which is, a platform. It's just a platform, but people take it as news, as what's happening. And so somebody said, well, Pamela Price just bought new televisions for all of the inmates at Santa Rita County Jail. I know it's ridiculous, right? But someone chimed in a reply or a comment and said, it's true. I verified it. So it was completely false, but they presented it to the people on that platform as if it was verified. And that was the sort of beginning. Like, I was like, whoa. how do you represent something like that to the public and have people actually verifying it and then people believing it? It was totally insane, but that's
I've talked a little bit about this before around on social media, for instance, and I have gone round and round. Like I've people look at the big boys, but let's just take a Meta or Twitter or anybody. They're protected by Section 230 in the Constitution, or not in the Constitution, but in law, at the federal level. And what Section 230 essentially does is it makes them not liable for what people might say. And what I think we're finding, right? But what I think we're finding is the people who have nothing to lose, they're the ones who can always lie because you can't really sue them to get nothing. You're not
right.
getting anything from them.
Exactly. Right.
And so that's the part that
Exactly.
really bothers you, because what it does
Hmm.
is anybody else, I always tell people, if people were going to get sued because of what they were going to say, the internet would be a very quiet place because you just
It's
wouldn't
true.
say certain things. There's just
Yeah.
things that you would not say. And
Right.
and I think that social media companies have, fought you know, with what should be taken down and what shouldn't be taken down. What's hurtful? I've had people talk about what this information is hurtful. And I have to tell people from time to time, even in our newsroom, is it hurtful because your feelings are hurt, or is it the truth and you don't like the truth? Like, just because information is not information that you like doesn't make it untrue. Um, but also, and this being a policymaker, um, there are things that just have to have interpretation, and the interpretation is going to mean something, could mean something different for each different person that reads it. And so I think it's about trying to figure out how we are clear in that. But and it sounds like in your particular scenario, you did not buy TVs for however many inmates or what have you. And so that would
Exactly.
be just a flat out lie that is not true and it's not verified. And to me, those are the things that should be, I don't want to say pulled down, but those are the things that should be corrected in some kind of way, um, because it's not true and it's a lie. And if it is a real lie, then these are the things that should be struck down. Um, and we should not. I mean, I don't know whose wisdom this was whenever Section 230 and the whole internet bill came about, but we know what small claims court is like. We're not gonna get around and go start suing people in small claim, like, you know what I mean? So I think whoever really kind of thought that this was the right way for us to do things, I think it's, I think we're all feeling what the harm is. And I think the flip side is trying to control speech also has its own share of challenges because of what people believe and what you know to be true and what you don't know to be true. Um, it's really icky, it's just really sticky. And I think, what we try to do is stay above the fray, because I think there's right now, um, I haven't seen a pathway forward on how you really fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so
That's the part
true
that's the
because
hardest.
yeah. Yeah. It's so true. When you get into the fray, the first thing people say, well, it's my First Amendment right. And yeah, you got a First Amendment right to lie, but it's not fair to the public, right?
I mean, and I think you have a First Amendment right, but maybe not to lie, because you still have to say what's truthful, right? So you still have to have, you can say it, but then you can have repercussions by just saying something that's not true. Um, and I think that we don't want to stop people from doing that, but I think also people cannot, you can't submit. It's a crime to submit a false police report, right? Like if I submit something that is a false police report, it's a lie. That is a that is, so yeah, it would be my right to be able to do it. But if it is a lie, then it would not be right. And I feel like, there has to be something within, like there has to be a happy medium somewhere, that when we know that it's an actual, uh, just a flat out untruth lie, then those are the things that, should probably be removed, or some kind of asterisk needs to be next to it so that it's, so it's clear, so the reader doesn't even think that it's real. Um,
Right, but we know that's not going to happen on X. Okay, people are going to be able to say whatever they want to say, and it's not ever going to come down, and there's not going to be any fact checking, And as you point out, and we pointed out in prior episodes, why can't you sue them? I mean, people, the recall people after I left the office said I stole furniture out of the DA's office, which was ridiculous and totally a lie. But who wants to sue them? They're, $1 million in debt already.
Well,
Uh,
right, which is where that part comes in, right? People who say things are usually reckless because they don't have anything. The people who have something and have credibility, they usually do not want to be attached to saying something that is not true, and that's because lawsuits have consequences. I mean, just look at what happened to Fox News and their defamation case. I mean, and no matter what anybody wants to say about it, I mean, they had to pay. I mean, the light shining that you were not going to be able to harm people with your lies. And I know that elected officials a lot of times kind of get pushed into some of these places like where it's public. So the public, because you're a public figure, you get more. There's more that can kind of be said to you about you. But at the same time, you know, I think what we have to try to do, and I think this is the work that I'm trying to do, is figure out how we uplift the people who are going to be honest and be, you know, good referees in this space, because that's what it is, right? I feel like a lot of times I'm a referee. Like what we do is referee work, to being able to go back and look to say, okay, wait a second, is that true or false? You know, and it may be that, oh, we don't have enough information to label it either way, but we know that it's not, but you can't just sit out here and say that it's true. So, this is, some days it makes me feel like, okay, maybe I want to go to law school to look at this, because this is a whole thing where you could just really work to try to make the laws better, but not infringe on people's First Amendment rights, which I believe wholeheartedly, in protecting even the speech that I don't want to protect, even the speech that I don't agree with. But at the same time, flat out lies or not having enough information to just say stuff, I think that is something this is a new territory for America, because you didn't have that kind of ability to do this before. The FCC would control what you could say on radio and on TV, and now we just kind of unleashed the internet to say, let it be the wild wild west and let it be so. But while it has its good things, it does also have some demise to society. And hopefully enough like-minded people can stand together in community to try to, make sure that they can make the best of it. Um, just to make the best of it.
Yeah, well, I certainly want to acknowledge the role of the Post newspaper group in the Bay Area that did a lot of that refereeing over the last 2 years to make sure that the Black community got accurate information, about what was going on with the justice system under my administration, and that they were able to try to help people get a better perspective on what was really going on. Certainly the things that we did with organized retail theft, which, the mainstream media they just dismissed it. And a lot of the improvements that we made to the office, the Post newspaper was really trying to give folks the accurate perspective and the context in which, all of this media criticism was being leveled at, and doing accurate reporting, right?
There was a concerted effort to say we are tired of the retail theft. But whenever I used to see this, and I don't think that anybody has really still ever answered my question on this. But I was like, what was ever stopping? There was nothing. If you did retail theft, that was over $900. Period. So this is a false narrative that
Hmm.
you couldn't arrest people.
Yeah, right.
It was a false
Exactly.
narrative. I don't believe that. I
Yeah.
was like, you
Yeah.
could you could arrest people because you could. You chose not to. And now you want to use Prop 36 now to be your thing to say, yeah, I'm gonna go arrest them. And so I don't know that they needed it to be able to do that. I don't know that from a lot of the people that I talked to in law enforcement and DAs and different folks, because I was trying to understand it. But I also knew that, people know how to play the system and the game. And from my understanding, a lot of the things that people were doing around the retail theft, I mean, it was kind of funny that there was a lady, it was a husband and wife who were Anglo, and they were in San Diego, and they had a huge retail theft, but they had all the black and brown people going to steal all the stuff for them. And so that was really sad to see that, you would prey on people who don't have to go do that kind of dirty work.
Alameda County right now is leading the state. I think Los Angeles is ahead of us, but we are leading the state in Proposition 36 prosecutions of relatively low-level crime, people with mental health issues that are not getting treated. So there's a lot.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I would tell people, if you start finding that you're getting into a whirlwind with someone and they keep coming back, go check their profile. When you check their profile, you'll realize that they're not real people.
Right. It's a bot, right? How many times did I see something and I'm like, do something? And my people would come back and say, that's a bot, Madam DA. It's not even a real person.
It's not a real person. It's a bot.
But a real person put the money up for that bot, right? A real person controls that bot and has made that directive for that bot. Yeah.
But the interesting part is that you don't even have a way of tracing it, because if I'm a free account and they are putting the dollars to put all these, kind of bots in place, they're not even paying. It's not paying for advertising. So, my message for anybody who watches this program, and anybody, especially in the Black community, be careful about what you let your eyes see. Be careful about what you let your ears hear. And make sure that you're vetting the information, and do not waste your time. I mean, this is going to be our time to go back to the old school. It's going to be community meetings and those community town halls. And guess what? We can do those via Zoom now. You don't have to come out of your house, but we can have those things that are in person, so that we make sure we know who in our community is a part of these conversations, that they're real. And I think that is what's going to matter. I think it is going to be the things that happen whenever you have to look at voting, those kind of things, connecting community. That's going to be the stuff that we're going to get back to, because there's so much that you can't trust, that people are going to be looking. And so I think that a lot of the folks in Alameda County across the state, if they take that approach, I think that they're going to find that they will win out. It may feel like you're losing. It may feel like a long time, a long battle. I feel like I'm a part of that long battle, but just know that, the slow and steady is who wins the race. I don't think that ever changes.
Valuable wisdom. Thank you, Miss Regina Brown Wilson. Thank you so much for joining me on Pamela Price Unfiltered. Welcome to Legally Speaking. The Federal Communications Commission, known as the FCC, is in the midst of a full-on assault on the First Amendment and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Trump has fully weaponized the FCC to go after his enemies. On day one of his second term, Trump signed an executive order targeting the media. It's a directive called Restoring Freedom of Speech and Ending Federal Censorship. It's a way to censor information and effectively rebrands all speech into Trump's version of the news. Just like he branded the equal opportunity policies of the last 60 years with the stroke of a pen, saying that DEI policies, quote, undermine our national unity as they deny, discredit, and undermine the traditional American values of hard work, excellence, and individual achievement in favor of an unlawful, corrosive, and pernicious identity-based spoils system. The person to carry out Trump's war on the truth is Brendan Carr, the FCC's Trump-appointed chairman. He was originally appointed to serve on the FCC in 2017 by Donald Trump, and his term was renewed by President Biden in 2023. In 2020, Carr attacked the World Health Organization's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. He was a vocal surrogate for Donald Trump in the 2020 presidential election. Carr most famously wrote the FCC chapter of Project 2025, Trump's Policy Bible. Carr revived an FCC probe into a news distortion complaint against CBS over the same 60 Minutes Harris segment that was at the heart of Trump's personal lawsuit against CBS. Carr launched investigations into DEI practices at Disney and Comcast NBC Universal. He has been a leading voice to ban TikTok, calling TikTok digital fentanyl. In July, however, Congress voted to rescind $1.1 billion in funding that was already allocated for public broadcasting. They voted to eliminate all federal funding for public broadcasting for the next 2 years. For years, public broadcasting has provided information to people, almost 60 years, as an alternative to mainstream media. According to PBS CEO Paula Kerger, news represents only 10% of PBS programming. But PBS and its member stations receive about 15% of their operating budget from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Smaller stations in rural areas are the ones that most depend on the corporation's funding from the government, some as much as 40% of their revenue. Trump demanded, and the right-wing Congress passed legislation to defund the Corporation on Public Broadcasting to eliminate funding for PBS, NPR, and the now disbanded Voices of America. The legislative action against the corporation and PBS and NPR is blatantly political. Trump wrote on his Truth Social platform, NPR and PBS are a radical left disaster and 1,000% against the Republican Party. It is still important to distinguish between misinformation and disinformation. Misinformation may be false or inaccurate, but it's information that too often badly informed facts are mistaken as truth, like what you hear on Nextdoor. People really think they're telling the truth, however, without malicious intent. They just present the wrong information. Disinformation, on the other hand, is designed to deliberately mislead people. Misinformation can be accidental, while disinformation is maliciously intended to spread false information. Both lead to accidental ignorance or deliberate ignorance, which continues to deceive the public, which is why we need shows like this that talk about the unfiltered truth. Shadow banning on social media is also a major threat to credible information. Shadow banning is when social media platforms purposely limit or hide content. This content moderation places a restriction on viewer visibility and sometimes suppresses vital information needed to educate the public. Shadow banning, however, is not illegal. Firing news personalities who disagree with Trump is also not illegal. High-profile network terminations that we've seen are Joy Reid, Stephen Colbert, Terry Moran. What is the bottom line? In the new age of information, it is absolutely essential for people to look for many different media sources with diverse perspectives so that you can weigh the facts, reason, and judge for yourself the difference between truth or false information. We all need to subscribe to and support online independent publications such as Substack. We're on Substack for a reason, and I was delighted when Terry Moran, after he was fired from ABC News, announced that he was joining Substack. My friend and fellow author Pamela Drake introduced me to Substack. Locally, check out the Oakland Observer and Oakland Side. Also support Black news media such as the Post News Group, the Sacramento Observer, San Francisco Bayview, and the Sun Reporter. Nationally, look for The Intercept and Truth Out, Democracy Now!, The Joy Reid Show. In the words of Joy Reid, I'm proud to be his opponent. If a fascist is displeased with me, then I think I'm doing the right thing. In a long-form piece in Variety magazine, Todd Spangler describes how Donald Trump is defeating the First Amendment in America. Trump got a $16 million settlement with Paramount, the owner of CBS. He also got a $16 million settlement with Disney Corporation. He also got Congress to defund the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, thereby reducing the funding available to PBS and NPR. The goal, as described by Jamil Jaffer, the executive director of the Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia University, quote, appears to be to make the government the only source of information and authority in our society. So what's driving the Paramount settlement? The backstory is a backroom deal worth billions to Paramount. Paramount owns CBS, Nickelodeon, Paramount Pictures, and Comedy Central, and a bunch of other stations. They were selling local stations to one of Trump's billionaire buddies, Larry Ellison. Ellison is the co-founder of Oracle and a close buddy and investor of Elon Musk. Paramount needed the FCC approval to sell to Ellison. After the settlement with Trump, the FCC approved the deal with Ellison. The media is all about the Benjamins. Making money is far more important than telling you the facts. News is what they say it is and what sells, not the truth or the facts. For Paramount, $16 million was nothing compared to the value of the $8.4 billion deal the FCC approved. And Trump is winning the ideological warfare. Larry's billionaire son, Skydance CEO David Ellison, promises to eliminate all U.S.-based DEI programs at Paramount, create a new ombudsman to field complaints of ideological bias in news coverage, and run $20 million worth of public service announcements consistent with Trump's ideological beliefs. So if you watch CBS, Comedy Central, or even Nickelodeon or any of the stations that Paramount and Skydance owns, get ready to be Trumpified. And stay tuned as the assault on the First Amendment continues in Trump's America. Thanks for tuning in to Pamela Price Unfiltered. Please like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And please, this month, sign up as a founding member or a paid subscriber to my Substack newsletter to read the weekly word from Pamela Price Unfiltered. Your support keeps the conversation raw and unfiltered. And you can listen to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts.